Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the DJ Sessions Presents the Virtual Sessions. I'm your host, Darren, and right now we're going to do one thing before we start this interview. We're going to flippy flop the episodes. We have the Surfing DJs coming in from New York City, one of my favorite cities in the entire world. We have, is it Jean-François Collard and Hannah Roth with the Surfing DJs. Welcome on the show today.
Thank you, Darren. Good to be here.
Awesome. Absolutely. Super excited to talk with you. I know we were doing some pre-show chats before and had to drop it in there and let you know that that is one of my favorite cities in the entire world to be in. You know what? When you're doing this technical stuff, you always got to remember to turn off certain things in the background, like your audio transmission that's coming in. And there we go. Boop. Got 5 servers running with multiple streams and everything going on. And sometimes when I turn them on, I forget to turn the audio off. So I was listening to myself and what I was saying with the intro there. But again, as I said before in the pre-show, it's a live show and anything goes. So you two DJ and produce music. You're based out of NYC. That's awesome. But something very unique. You, and I've heard this done before with a lot of artists, but traditionally you produce all your own original tracks. And that's what you DJ. Mm-hmm. You know, tell our DJ sessions friends what. First of all, I bet you the number one question you get is, what genre do you focus on? One particular genre, style? Are you partial to one, or how does that all work out?
House, EDM, progressive house within EDM, or tech and house, progressive house.
Yeah, EDM. Yeah, so I suppose is more like the umbrella that you'd use for most of it.
Something that makes people dance.
What we wanted to do.
Make people dance. That's you know, that's one of the key things. That's one of the elements I love about electronic dance music. I fell in love with it probably before I was 18 years old. Growing up in the 80s, you know, and the influence of the synthesizer coming in and really taking over as a musical instrument. I remember my 7th grade choir teacher was very adamant that he did not like drum machines. He did not like synthesizers because he, as a musician, could tell the difference. And yes, in the 80s, they weren't what they were cracked up to be. You got it. But over time, you know, even you know, my friend, his father was a musician, and he's a musician himself and uses, you know, Logic and Ableton and all that fun stuff to create music. His father's like, that's not really making music. You know, you're programming, and it's like, well, wait a second. You know, you're just using one different art form to a different art form to create something. And really, if the output is somebody dancing to it, is somebody enjoying it, you know, I mean, even you look at the old Art of Noise stuff, that was kind of out there a little bit, but I love Art of Noise, you know, I'm craft work, you know.
If we all enjoy it. And I would argue that maybe a nostalgia now that people like to hear a very obviously synthetic artificial drum machine or a very old school from the 80s type of right? There's a kind of back to the 80s type of movement.
And one of the things we sometimes hear from people is they'll listen and they'll say it's like an 80s influence, because both of us were really influenced by that. And I also grew up in the 80s. I loved it. It was all my favorite stuff.
I frequently listen to and have for the last 22 years internet radio station out of San Francisco called, it's by Soma FM, called Groove Salad. And it's a lot of down-tempo ambient. And I had a friend of mine 2 years back, and she was like, oh my God, I'm into this synth wave. I'm into this synth wave stuff. And I'm like, I've been listening to that since the 1980s. That's old school. I go, have you ever listened to Groove Salad? I always got to give him a shout out when I can. But listen to Groove Salad. It's a lot of that 80s synthwave, down-tempo ambient. I almost like to call it like Jan Hammer, like Crockett's theme. It's one of my favorite songs out of Miami Vice, you know. I know, yeah, I'm dating myself. I just turned 50 last year, so you know, I'm all good. But yeah, I mean, I always tell people, you know, if you ever make me angry, which I very rarely get angry, just put on some 70s disco or some 80s new wave or 80s pop, and I'm gonna be like, okay, you got me dancing now. What do I do?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all around.
Totally. Absolutely. That's really the goal of our music. We want people to move, to dance, to be happy, to have music we like for to party. And one of the best compliments I've ever heard about our music is one night we were DJing. It was streamed on a radio station, and one of Hannah's friends could not join us, but she listened on the radio, and she didn't know exactly at what time we would be on or off, right? But she told us, "Oh, you were on at 11:10, and you played until that time because I recognized the sound."
Yeah,
And
it was
to
so
me-
different than anyone else's because it really is quite original because it's just our brains doing it. So
if you had a track, one of your tracks that you currently play, can you pick, like, I know DJs build a set and tell a story when they play. Is your set, I don't want to say pre-programmed, but do you know it, like, okay, we're gonna build up with these tracks, then we're gonna get into this track and make the crowd go wow, and then come down and kind of cool down, like a workout in a sense where you warm up, get it hyped up, get that BPM go, or not BPM, get the pulse rate going. Like, come on, Darren. Working out and DJing too, kind of same thing, BPM and pulse rate. But get that pulse rate going and then kind of tone it back down. Is that your storytelling process, or what could you describe your storytelling or musical storytelling process?
To me, each track, each song is a story in and of itself. It's like an episode. We do try to build an arc, and bring people slowly up in a faster pace, typically during prime time, and also we have to take into account the DJ before us and the DJ after us.
We try to know who we're playing with so that we can complement in the transitions and stuff, so it's seamless, and also ahead of time you sort of know the vibe a little bit of the place, just because it's always different. It's not necessarily always just hard dancing. Sometimes they want something a bit more mellow.
Yeah.
So we'll cater it to that depending on what we've got in our repertoire and build it that way.
And we created enough tracks now that we have more mellow stuff and a hardcore dance that we can adjust a little bit to how people react. If they dance, if they're in the mood to dance, then we can keep on going that way. If they tend to more be mellow and chill and enjoy a little margarita, then we can gear down.
We do watch, see what with it, feed off that kind of thing too. Like, okay, and maybe next one, let's do something different. Let me plan, because sometimes you just don't know who the crowd's
absolutely. And if you could share with our DJ Sessions audience, what's one track that you currently play, and describe in detail why it's such a great production?
Oh gosh.
Why I cannot tell you, but there's something gritty. I like, for example, dropping in to
it's one of my favorites for dancing.
One of a little plug for one of our tracks that has a gritty sound that really make us want to move.
Something about it that just you can't help but move. That makes sense. There's something just in it that you just, whether you're dancing or sometimes I listen, I'm walking in the street in New York City and I'm just kind of like bopping. People must think I'm a bit weird, but some tracks you just can't help but move to, and that's one of our favorites for that. Like, it's got a great build and it brings you up and down, and
there's another favorite of mine called The Future. For everybody who's listening, if you want to check it out, it's on Spotify, on all platforms. I think also the reason I like them is because it has this little sound that is so contemporary. And I'm pretty sure, I'm willing to bet to both of you, to everybody, that in 20 years, when we're going to hear a track that has a little bit of ding, 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 ding in the background, we say, oh, that's a track from the 20s.
From the aughts.
All tracks from the 20s.
I just heard that term not too long ago, the aughts.
I know, me too. It's kind of recent, and then I realized that's how you describe it in the 2000s and
if you had to pick one of your productions as your most favorite one, which one would that be? And is there a thought behind it for it to be your favorite? Was that the one you just mentioned that you're playing now? I mean, you got to take your whole library into account.
One of my favorites is Berlin Kiev, which uses a recording of the voice of John F. Kennedy at Berlin, a famous speech he made in Berlin, and we relate the situation in Berlin with what's happening in Ukraine, and to me it's dear to my heart. I'm a bit biased. It's more the story and the history than the music.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
think
my favorite.
I kind of like rediscover as well. There's a couple of them that when you hear them again and you think, oh, I did that a while ago. Oh, I really like, you sort of, because you file them away and they're all your babies.
Yeah.
But then sometimes they pop up and you're like, oh, I really did like that one a little bit more.
And I want to insist on the fact that we discovered the vocals as sung by Hannah.
Sometimes we have our vocals in them. That was not anything to do with why I think I like it. But maybe it's why I'm a little bit personal with it, because there is me in it as well. So, yeah, that one. We had a friend text us once. It was such a great compliment. She said, I've just got on loop. I can't get enough of this track. It's so good. And that means so much when you hear that.
The term that you use there, babies, quote unquote babies, that's a term I've heard used by other people. They're like your children. And sometimes you take them out, you dust them out, you put them take them out of the sandbox. You go, I want to reformat. I want to work on this again. Sometimes you put them away and you're like, I'm never letting that see the light of day. Or I come back and I love it. You coddle them, you love them, and then you release them out in the world and you see what happens. You never know what's going to happen, which leads me kind of into my next question here is, do you make music with the intention of making it a popular record or popular track? Or do you make music solely to satisfy yourself and success is just kind of a nice side effect of that?
Well, we hope it's going to be pleasant to hear by everybody, but it has to please us first. And success, well, I cannot say we have reached it anyway. So
it's an end goal perhaps down the line, but it's sort of a fun passion project.
As long as we have fun doing it, and actually same thing with DJ. Personally, what I like while I DJ is to have a party, to have fun. The goal is not to perform or to entertain. Is if everybody's having a party I'm having a party with them, that's fantastic. That's collective moment is the goal.
I always love it when guests kind of preemptively answer questions without me having to ask them. And I don't send questions. It's for all our viewers and your fans. Well, I don't send questions out. So these aren't scripted. You're getting these off the cuff, brand new, because
we confirm. We tried to write Darren to have questions. He refused.
Because one of the questions I wanted to ask is, how would you define success as a DJ/producer? Would it be a Beatport top 10 hit, a sold out tour, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it might be different for both of us, because for me, it's the producing that I love more than the DJing. And I would love something like hitting. I don't need to go out and DJ to thousands of people. That's not my dream so much. But to just have it something that maybe you'd be walking down the street, or you'd hear it out of someone's car, or you'd walk into a store and it's on someone's playlist, or that kind of thing is where I feel that would be like, wow, that's awesome. I've done something that meant something to someone else enough that they wanted to play it just because they discovered the sound.
And my dream would be that people would come to one of our shows saying, we're coming to listen to SurfingDJs.
Yeah.
Knowing the tracks in advance and coming to hear a show about our music. We have a couple of fans already in New York City, and they come regularly to listen to our tracks, but that's a couple. That's not a lot.
And one of them is an awesome guy. He's also a DJ, and we didn't know him from Adam. And we were doing a gig in Brooklyn, and he just didn't stop dancing the entire set. He was the only one just dancing the entire set. Some people would dance and stop, and afterwards he just said, "I just love it. So original. I've never heard this sound before." Because we are saturated with DJs in New York City.
Yes.
You get kind of a little bit the same, and we've had a couple other DJs come up to us and say, and Chris, right, also, like, hey, I really dig that you guys are original. I don't know this stuff, and that's the great compliment. So,
and I don't want to direct the conversation. It's your show, okay. But it's a conversation you had with Martin Jensen, a fantastic interview. I strongly recommend to everybody.
Yeah, it was really
about AI. As a music producer, we should not, I believe personally, we should not fear competition from AI, because if we fear that, it means we're not good at what
I'm
we're
glad
doing,
you
right?
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in. I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a hot topic right now. Especially, I just saw recently you know, I'm taking my AI classes, so I understand the different systems. I know how to use, you know, work and use them. I always like being a little bit ahead of the curve, as we mentioned pre-show. But I just saw that Timberland signed the first ever AI artist, or was the first signing of an AI artist. You know, and you look at something like that, and it's like, okay, well, who owns the AI artist? Who owns the rights to that AI artist? And what's that going to look like? You know, we're going to see more of this happen? It's already happening, but somebody getting a signed artist that they're going to promote and put out there and commercialize. It's like, whoa, it was like what the Gorillas did when all, you know, you knew who the artists were, but they were these cartoon characters, and they would play behind the stage, behind this, the artist would be on the screen, the cartoons would be on the screen, but the artist would be behind, with like Del the Funky Homo Sapien was one of them. I should know all four of the guys, but you know, that was kind of an interesting, that wasn't really AI, but they were these cartoon generated or anime generated characters that were playing the music. Was the band the Gorillas, you know, which is really kind of cool. But now that's coming into AI, and then you look at, I know they're testing it. I know how R&D goes. I used to work for Apple. Not that I knew any secrets when I worked there. I wasn't in that level of Apple, but you know that R&D is going on at levels way beyond what the consumers will ever see for 20 years. You know, and somebody has to be sitting back there and saying, we want AI. Well, we know it exists. You see this in movies. It's going to read the crowd. It's going to read your perspiration. You see it in like the casino movies where they can measure sweat glands and see if somebody's cheating, if they're counting cards or doing certain movements. And maybe that's too far advanced. Maybe it's actually there and we don't know about it.
Exactly. I was about to say that maybe many music producers already use AI in their tracks and don't tell us. And it's so I'm sure we're going to hear a strange, new, beautiful sound that we had never heard from one of the top A-lister DJs, right? And we will never know that that sound was crafted by one of the AIs, which to me points to the fact that it will be harder and harder for DJs who don't have access to that technology, DJs and music producers, to compete. But that's the
well, and the thing is, you know, one of the things that I've seen as a current trend, and I mean, this has been happening for some time now, but I think I'm wondering when it's really when the audience is gonna pick up on it, or do they not care at all about, you see, and I have nothing against big festivals. I have nothing against the DJs that play them at all. I love them. I love going to those big type events. I do love the small, intimate club experience as well, where I'm 10, 20 feet away from the DJ, you know, maybe even 50 feet away from the DJ if you measured it out and you're actually having that intimate experience and they're actually DJing. But you see these big festivals and all the DJs are playing and they're not wearing headsets. They're not mixing the tracks. They used to wear the headsets back in the day. And I know, being in backstage production, that you have these massive light shows and fireworks being cued and drones flying. You can't have a DJ train wreck on the decks, you know, and screw up the lighting and all that. So it's all pre-recorded. But now a lot of these DJs are stepping up and they're playing their track and they're not really playing. Or the knob twisting and all the it's like the song's already been mastered. I'm not the human style or their theatrics, you know, just, but you know, you get up there and it's like, well, if you had a DJ that's doing that and they're playing a show that's generated that with all the lights and everything, why couldn't you do that with an AI experience? Say, here's the show, and then make a holographic DJ. And it's coming. I mean, they got Tupac on stage back at Coachella a few years back. You know, I think they got something with Michael Jackson. They do it with too, the hologram effect. You know, things.
That's right.
There was a big controversy around, I think, Skrillex, who did not dispute the fact that he had pre-recorded his set, and he was saying, but all my art for my craft is in producing the music, and it's okay that the set is essentially pre-recorded. I think if people really enjoy the show, however the pleasure is produced, that's fantastic. What I fear is that people are more and more going to see a big name, which, by the way, makes it harder and harder for smaller DJs to attract people. Smaller clubs, bars are getting more and more empty because, in my opinion, what I observe is that people tend to save money to go to the bigger show, to say, I want to see Skrillex or David Guetta or Anima, etc., because they want the big experience. So the AI will not replace that, because people will want to say, "Oh, I want to see David Guetta."
Yeah.
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 The question is, how do you become a name that attracts
Exactly.
people? If that's what
If you both could go back 25 years in music history, I should actually put this back 35 years in music history because you're more 80s influence. 35. Let's go 35 years in music history. I guess that would only put us to the 90s. Okay, 45 years back in music history. I just dated myself.
trouble.
You know what? Why don't I got to change that question now. Go back 50 years in music history or go forward 50 years in music future. Which one would you pick and why?
Which
if you
period
go back in time 50 years with the knowledge you know now, or go forward 50 years with the knowledge you know now, which way would you want to go?
Oh.
You got the DeLorean.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't know, of course.
Yeah,
so
right.
then it could. That's an interesting question because, well, yeah, we're all curious about what's coming.
Yes.
But then there is that nostalgia of what's come
The
before,
80s, definitely.
If I was going back, it would be the 80s.
The 80s. But 20, 30 years ago, I would have started doing some programming to create the Abletons of the world before they were created. I think it was such a great idea when the first computers came out to try and make music from a computer. That was that's something I would have done if I could rewind.
I remember playing with I think it was Fruity Loops 3 back in 2000. I had it on a laptop that I'd gotten. I was always fascinated by sequencers, and I ended up getting some Roland hardware, the SP808 and the MC505, and just like playing around with that. I grew up. I came from a musical background with my family. My brothers were musicians, played in a band, and I had keyboards, synthesizers, rack mounts, 8 tracks, 4 tracks, studio gear all around growing up as a kid. But I went more towards video production. So I played with the video camera, let my brothers do the music. But yeah, it's if you could give one production tip or insight to new producers out there, what would that be?
YouTube. So much good content. There's lots of free plugins to monitor volume across frequencies. That's something that is really useful. But it's I'm blanking on. I don't have any other tip. If you are in New York City, there are a few schools in New York City that give free classes. I strongly recommend. Plug for 343 Labs, for example. Great school here in Manhattan.
Try and just absorb as much as you can from any of the stuff out there that would help you develop your path, I suppose. And be open to criticism and learning.
Yes.
You can't go in with too big of an ego. You can develop it later when you become a big guy.
Yes.
Which does happen. But stay humble for a little while.
Yes. And to go into visuals, I think going back to how do you differentiate yourself as a DJ or music producer, I think if you don't have nice visuals, it's going to be harder and harder. Virtual reality, which I know is one of your big themes, will be a way to differentiate yourself as a producer of music and video content merged together, an entire experience. Think Anima at the Sphere, right? It's hard. It's harder and harder. That's why I believe that fewer and fewer music producers / DJs will be able to make it, because they have the teams, they have the technology to help them. So it's going to be harder and harder for the rest of us to compete. But if we want to try, that's we should not forget the visual.
Yeah, and one of the questions I frequently ask is, to producers is, have they ever thought, or even DJs, is have you ever thought of doing something with video as part of your mix, or mixing audio and video together and put it on just a music video, but making that part of your overall presence, your overall show, and then leading obviously into, have you looked into doing anything in virtual reality? Because you can have a whole arena in there. You see these shows like Marshmello getting like 12 million people, Travis Scott, 15 million people. There's always the battle on who's gotten the most in Fortnite of like concerts being played, but you have millions of people tuning in. And it's like going back in the day and saying to somebody, when the MySpace was around, it's like, do you have a website? And they're like, no, we have a MySpace and our songs are up on our MySpace. But you have this platform where you can have a website, you can control the experience there. Whereas MySpace has everything else going on, but you could do something there on your own website, where now you got these virtual reality worlds where you could build a place where people can come to, congregate, and be looking around. And like, I got big screen TVs, like you'd think it was almost like an IMAX theater that you could watch our shows in. And you're like, whoa.
The problem I see is that it's getting every field is getting more and more specialized. You don't have enough hours in your days to do all this.
Tell me about
it. So we, by the way, we just got signed with Flash Forward, a fantastic label in Belgium, and plug-in for them. Thank you to these guys. We also work with an agent also in Europe at Beskar Bookings. A big thank you to them, because they've been taking so much from our shoulders that frees up time for what we do to produce music and DJ. But otherwise, it's so difficult to put music out there if you don't have someone's help. It's a full-time job. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And we were not doing it as well as they can. So going back to the visuals, tomorrow actually we're going to play in Connecticut, and a gentleman called Kiefer, fantastic videographer in terms of making projections in the rooms, is going to do the video visuals for the show. We cannot compete with him. We should not. We should partner. We should collab. I think the collab of music that we've been all doing in the music space will be more across media. Music producers collaborating with visual.
I'm glad, once again, you actually talked about something that was going to be my next question I was going to bring up, asking you about your getting signed with Flash Forward, and you kind of just answered that question of what that experience is like. And it took me back to, I remember I was interviewing a DJ years ago, Paulo Mojo, had a nightclub here backstage, and he said, one of the worst decisions he ever made in his career, well, it wasn't worst decisions, but one of those toughest decisions was going from an artist DJ to opening up his own label. And he goes, I lost the ability to start produce music and DJ because I was so focused on the label. He goes, and I failed at it. But what I learned from that is I went and hired somebody to do my label. And once that happened, I didn't have to look at that anymore. And they took care of everything. And it just went and took off.
Yeah.
And, I'm the type of person, I wear 16, 17 different hats. Most people think I'm the guy who just clicks a button and we're sitting here doing an interview. It's like, no, I spend 45 to 50 hours a week. You could make my own reality television show, watch a producer of an online series in the background all day long. Yeah. It's almost a concept I've thought about doing, is just setting up a camera in the background and letting it go 24/7, or when I'm in the office. I don't need to add another show to the already 14 shows I'm producing.
So everything is so specialized. We cannot be good at everything. No. Well, Anima is only 1 or 2 people. I'm sure it's 20 people. Or more, right?
You mentioned offloading that to your label. You have the other gentleman you're working with as well. What measures do you take to promote yourself, your releases, and your career on your own? And is solid PR an important asset for a DJ / producer to have? And do you work with any publicists or PR people? Or do you do it all in-house?
No PR really. They do a lot of social media for us. Beskar Bookings does more the bookings of DJ gigs.
We're DJing in Ibiza in September for them.
Yeah, through them. That's
kind of awesome.
That's
so another nice shout out. Yeah. Instagram, I suppose. Social media. It's really how we. Yeah. JF's amazing at it.
We were talking pre-show a little bit about ADE this year, and I've been a couple years. In the past, and possibly going this year. You mentioned Ibiza, and I was like, last year when we were talking pre-show about being at Rave the Planet, I had this small window of opportunity. I was going to almost bucket list going to Ibiza for my 50th birthday. And the only problem was that, and I was trying to do all this very quickly, and I didn't sit down to think because there was so much going on. But in order for me, I could have got a ticket from Berlin to Ibiza for like $250. But then getting back home to Seattle from Ibiza was going to be like 2,400. But I didn't think I could have just flown back to Berlin or flown. And then got over like $800, but I would have had to get an Airbnb for like, because I was leaving Berlin on Tuesday, and I would have to get an Airbnb for like 4 days, and at that time of year, it was August. It was like find anything around. Like, it was hard to find a place lower than 150 euro a day, but most places were like 300 to 500 a night. I was like, it would be cool, but don't want to drain the conversation. But talking about festivals, events, and going out, we'll talk about ADE in a second. But you just played Dance Parade in New York City. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, that was really cool.
But the float, like you,
and unlike anything we've ever done, really. I mean, it's part of a huge parade. So you've got also, I mean, it's really about dancers. So you've got dancing from all over the world, but different types of music, and it takes a good couple of hours to make its way downtown through the west side of Manhattan. And we had such a fun experience because we had just DJs on our float originally, and then there were these fabulous dancers. One guy was in a full bright blue leotard with butterfly wings and some dancing fairies around him. And they said, hey, do you guys mind if we jump on your float? And we're like, kidding? That's amazing. So they jump on, they're dancing, they're doing their stuff. It was, I mean, it became like the best party float of the whole thing. It was so much fun.
And
so it was lovely.
And people can see videos and pictures of this on our website, SurfingDJs.com.
Yeah. You mean that website right there?
So it was that website right there. Was
yes.
Awesome. No, it reminds me, like I said, when I was in Berlin for Rave the Planet, working with Riverside Studios, we talked about this little pre-show, being on a float on a double-decker semi-truck bus, and there's 25 things of these driving around for 8 hours with 350,000 people. And being an immersed experience like that, I want to do more of those. It's funny because here in Seattle, we have our mobile studio. If you go to our website, we have a series called the Mobile Sessions, which is a smaller version of this. We can put about 10 people in the back of our glass box mobile studio, and we drive around with a concert-grade sound system on it. People can hear us from about 2 city blocks away, about 20 stories up in the city. Just, we're kind of an icon here in Seattle for doing something like that. So it's just an experience of having bringing music out to the masses in a different way. When Pandy was going on, we did a campaign and we put a banner on top of the truck and we called it #Boogie on Your Balcony. So when we drove by, people could come out and like dance when we were driving by, stuff like that. But just really trying to do things out of the box. And I think those kind of experiences where it isn't just one festival, you're locked in. You have like a parade where you have multiple artists going by and people can experience multiple stages or multiple platforms going on. I think that's really awesome to do those kind of things.
Yeah,
it's not easy to DJ on a moving
platform. That's a lot of people. I have to say, they got to get their truck legs on with our mobile studio. Even though I'm driving at no more than 10 miles an hour, it's still, they got to get used to it.
But in the parade, you have to
taking tracks, and sometimes we got to go uphill, so they're kind of like holding on. They're like, whoa. But they usually get it after a little bit of a while. But you mentioned ADE. You're going to ADE this year. Awesome for that. Love that. Yeah. Love that event. Lots of cool stuff going on in Amsterdam around that time.
It was a great way to meet people in the industry, from producers to
labels
to it's all organized again by our friends at Better.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we try to hook up with a few labels and do some like go to the parties. Obviously, try not to party too much.
Yeah, right.
I got in trouble a couple times. Let's just say I missed a few key interviews because I didn't wake up on time.
We're going to have an event there, so Darren,
we'll definitely let you know about that. Do you do Winter Music Conference as well? Is that still a stateside American thing, or is that? I know Winter Music Conference used to be big, and they years ago Ultra, and it's in Miami.
I was going to say they've rebranded now. They call it something.
Miami Music Festival.
The Miami.
Miami Music Week.
Yeah, we played there last year.
To
March 2024. Yeah,
we had
that's a fantastic place.
Awesome.
That's very popular, and that's
Well,
really
you know, is there anything else
I
you
think-
want to let our DJ Sessions fans know before we let you go this afternoon?
Well, we like
Ooh.
Miami in particular because we can surf, and we are called Surfing DJs
And we
because
do actually surf.
we are avid
Okay.
surfers.
Now, I noticed you're both wearing the same color shirts, though. Is that merch you have from your store?
Yeah, that's
It's our
our
branding.
logo.
Yeah, that's our
We have,
logo.
well, our logo, we have our colors. We appreciate the fact that you also have your color scheme, your brand, two colors,
we have
blue
purples,
and
purple.
darker and purple. We went the similar route, a kind of light blue and pink for the logo.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it sort of.
My favorite color in the world only comes up twice a day, and if it's not overcast in Seattle, you can see it. It's right after twilight, but before black. There's this purple, like there's a dark blue that goes right into a purple, and then it goes, you know, black in the night, and you just see it. I see it twice a day at this one point. It's just like this perfect color. It's like, that's my favorite color. So kind of the blue is going from sunset, nighttime, because we're a nightlife show. So it's like going with the sun setting, with, you know, you go from the orange, sun setting to the orange to the blue, and then into the purple, and then into the darkness of the night. That's kind of the theme behind my thinking for the show. So thank you very much for that. We'll definitely look forward to touching base with you and having you on the show again in the future. Where's the best place people can go again to find out more information about you both?
Instagram slash surfing or surfingdjs.com. Number one Instagram handle surfingdjs. One word, plural.
That's
awesome. Well, Jean-François and Hannah, thank you very much for coming on the show this evening. We'll definitely be in touch with you, and have you on the show again in the future, because it sounds like you got a bunch of stuff going on all the time. And we'd love to hear that with DJs, producers, and industry.
Catch up in New York City if you come, or in
yes,
in
absolutely. We'll be in touch, definitely. So on that note, I'm going to get going. I'm your host, Darren, for the DJ Sessions. That's Hannah and Jean-François from SurfingDJs on the DJ Sessions. Don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com, where you can find out all of our past episodes, past news stories, new news stories, over 700 news stories a month, 2,600 past episodes, and more, exclusive mixes, mobile sessions, silent disco sessions, rooftop sessions. There's a lot of sessions at the DJ Sessions, but it's all at thedjsessions.com. Our social links are there as well. Feel free to subscribe, donate, check out our merch store, donate to the show. Again, Darren for the DJ Sessions, Jean-François, and Hannah for the Surfing DJs. And remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.